All right, everybody, welcome back to 32 All the Way. We had a little technical difficulty. We're going to try this again. Today, we are going to be speaking to Gibson Dickie. His first book was just released on June 25th, 2-3 weeks ago, and is called Count to 10. To give you a little background here before we introduce Mr. Dickie, Amy is cursed by her psychotic impulse to count every good or bad thing that happens to her in her life. When she reaches her decisive bad count of 10, there's a real danger that her alter ego, Jessica, will make someone suffer. The local police force is in a state of flux. Detective Sergeants Holmes and Chappelle are thrown together to solve a murder. One inspirational, one meticulous. They are presented with a body more than a week old, limited and contradictory forensic evidence, and no obvious suspect. Having missed the critical first 48 hours of opportunity, the detectives have an uphill struggle if they are to solve a brutal and callous crime and achieve a successful arrest and conviction. The perpetrator has methodically cleansed the crime scene and dispassionately disposed of the evidence. Can she continue to avoid detection? Could she possibly strike again? And this is our synopsis of Count to 10. Mr. Dickie, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Fantastic. So let's delve into this a little bit. Are we talking about a psychopath? Are we talking about a split personality? What are we talking about here without giving away your book? You've made it very clear that this is not a whodunit, that we know who did it.
Correct. I wanted to do something slightly different from the usual police super detective solve the crime story. So I tell you who did it at the start, and then we try to catch her.
Now, has this facilitated your story? Do you find that we've gotten it out of the way, that we know who did it?
Yeah, we tell you right at the start who did it. It's a female who does it. She's got this compulsion to count about things that good and bad that happen to her. She's not schizophrenic, but she behaves in two different ways depending on her circumstances. And so when she's bad, she's very bad, and when she's good, she's normal.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting take for a debut novel. We were talking before the computer came on. We were talking a little bit in our aborted session there. I don't want to disparage anybody else's books, but the same topics seem to come up all the time. Or you have people that will write in a very basic framework. And I understand why that is. I don't think that my first novel was great, but you seem to have taken a lot of, I think, what people would have walked through for a first book and said, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I love police procedurals. I love watching Bosch and CSI and things, but I'm past the whole super cop with the dysfunctional family and the recovering alcoholic who solves everything. I wanted to portray the police as real people with problems.
Yeah. Were you a fan of Cracker when Cracker was on?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was a different thing. At the time, it was very different.
Exactly, and I remember they tried to translate it into an American show and it didn't work, but that one I always found interesting. I mean, you're obviously going to see some of the background of the police lives or this or that, but to see actually the what they go through within their own psyches to have to do that kind of work, to see from the characters that you're mentioning here in the background of the book, it seems like not just who we're hunting, but the hunters are pretty messed up themselves. That they've got their own issues going on here.
They've got some issues. The guys Holmes and Chappell who are working together are two detective sergeants competing for a promotion, but they've been asked to work together, so you don't get full cooperation. You've got another one in the team who's got a nymphomaniac girlfriend that's driving him mad. Does it sound like a problem?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I was just thinking that, you know, for some guys, hey, that's the greatest thing in the world. Well, maybe not when you have to put up with it 24 hours a day.
I don't know. I wish I did.
So the entire background for this book, are you writing about just like off the cuff? Are we putting in some people that you know? Are we changing things around a bit?
Yeah, most of the characters are based on someone that I know, their personalities, the way they speak. But I haven't based it on anyone factual or anyone popular. I'm not in it. I don't have a character with me. The lead female character, the killer, is a blend of maybe 3 people. And I've had some funny feedback from people who know they're in it, shall we say?
It's very interesting when it comes to that. I'm always very interested to ask people that question. And you never know if people are going to take it as some form of flattery, or some people are going to be very upset about it. We were talking earlier, not to make it all about mine, but I seem to get one of 2 comments all the time. People are like, "Man, I can't believe you made me a character in your book," or I'll get "I can't believe you didn't make me a character in your book." So people, I don't know, people have a weird way of defining themselves, I guess, of what's going to flatter them. Any bad, negative comments so far?
Mostly positive, but they haven't read very far into it, so we'll see.
That's funny. So where would this wind up leading? Would this be a bigger series? Would you like to bring back? I don't want you to give too much of the book away. The whole idea behind this is that people go and do it. But would we be able to use Holmes and Chapel again somewhere down the line?
Yeah, there's a sequel is written.
Great.
It's being reviewed at the moment by the people who did the review of my first one. I've got some local readers, and they're reading that, and we're having a few issues with the beginning of the book, because maybe you can help me here, but it's a sequel, but I want it to be a standalone book, and
Yes.
I don't think I've found the balance yet.
Yes, we're having the exact same discussions right now when it comes to the second part that we're looking at. My wife and I have been talking about how we want to do it, because I really like the idea of a standalone story from anybody. But I would also like to see that if these characters are from another story, that at least there's reference to that book, right? Yeah. I hate using this cliche all the time, but for anybody that writes more than 1 or 2 books, always come back to the Star Wars thing. You can go watch Star Wars and think it's great and it's fantastic, but you can enjoy Return of the Jedi, or you could see Empire Strikes Back. And people always roll their eyes when I give them that example. I think, well, I would like you to enjoy what you're reading, but if these characters have existed before, to go back and see some kind of, has the relationship changed? Has it gotten any better? Like, for example, your 2 people in this book, you said that they're both detectives have had major issues. Both detectives, I mean, do they like each other at all? Is there a history between the 2 of them before this started?
No, they've been thrown together, and they've been put together in a way when they both know they're being considered for promotion, so they don't really want to help the other one out.
So is there any awareness of the other person's strengths or weaknesses before they've been put together?
I think they were put together because they are very different. One does everything by the notes, and one does it off the cuff. They were put together, but they're not cooperating as they go, because they both want to shine.
Yeah, that's that, you know what, that seemed to be a really interesting point here. You do say in here, you describe one of them as being meticulous, the other one as being inspirational. I could see how that would be 2 pieces that you're putting together that might not fit very well.
It could work. You could have best of both worlds, or you could have something which just doesn't work, and they just grind together like a couple of broken sort of gear wheels.
How is the experience of down here when we're talking about you, the actual author? Excuse me 1 second. You have a background in physics, something I don't understand at all. You're in the oil industry. You have been, Scotland born, Western Australia, Dubai. Has any of that influenced into the reading?
It's probably influenced the way I write a little bit. There's not much involvement of it in the story. It is very much an English-Welsh parochial borderline story, because there's a lot of jurisdiction issues in the city of Chester, because there is one street called Boundary Lane where one side of the street is England, one side is Wales. Different rules, different laws. It's bizarre.
Now, we were talking a bit about that earlier too. Do you feel that your representation, we were talking before, do you feel that your representation of England has changed a little bit? Because you've explained to me that from what you were just saying, what you were saying before, this is not. It doesn't sound like a very inclusive place.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. There are parts of certainly England which are very multicultural, and you've got communities that have come in from other countries, from Africa, from the Middle East, from the Indian subcontinent, from the Caribbean, but they don't tend to go into North Wales or into Northern Scotland. Whether it's the climate, whether it's the lack of welcome from the locals, I don't know. But this particular setting is not an area hugely populated by other nationalities.
Yeah, we're seeing everywhere now wants to be so inclusive, and seeing it where I live in Canada, and it just when you still see would be the proper term for it. When you still see enclaves like that, I don't know if people aren't being welcomed or they just the people there are not welcoming them at all. Like it always seems to be a mix of the two. It's always interesting when you see these areas when we get the BBC here in Canada, and some of the shows, it's very multicultural. It's very today. Or you'll get the one, oh geez, who's the veterinarian?
I don't know.
I didn't mean to stick you on the spot there. The vet. Not all creatures great and small. That's from when I was a kid. There's another updated version of it. He's a veterinarian. But when you see that, you think of England in the 1950s. They're out in the middle of nowhere, and he's got a small little place. And that's what came to mind when I was doing the research for your book. That this is the kind of neighborhood, the kind of community that we're going to be set in.
Yeah, well, if you cross out of Chester, which is an old kind of Roman-style city with a big wall, and you go into the Welsh countryside, it is hamlets, small towns, with a limited number of surnames. They are parochial, small populations, and they live the way they've always lived. And they don't really welcome change, maybe the way that the big cities do.
Yeah, it's interesting to put a story there, because that could really change the course of how it's going to happen, being that kind of insular community.
Yeah, it's in things like where I set it there. For example, if the police want CCTV footage, it has to come from the councils or the road divisions. It doesn't come from the police themselves. And if the Welsh police ask for it from an English council, it's a major headache, and vice versa. So it's actually giving criminals a better chance to escape.
Yeah, we've talked before how you like procedurals, and so do I. You've seen this so many times before, that the bureaucratic red tape, or one of the last ones I was just reading was about Whitey Bulger, the criminal from Boston. They would purposely drive just over the line to dump a dead body or to do a crime, because they knew that in the situation like you're talking, 2 or 3 different jurisdictions have to deal with this stuff now. And it's amazing. Some of these guys, some of these criminals, I mean, it's a full-time job. They've got to keep one step ahead of the police. I don't think people realize that. People think a lot of crime is just, oh, well, we went and did this. There's a lot of planning on their part as well.
I'm quite sure there are criminals out there who are doing risk assessments before they perform the crime.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt whatsoever.
The clever ones will get away with it, and the stupid ones will get caught. That's the way it is.
Again, you know what? I'm a huge fan of these type of books. I'm a huge fan of anything basically organized crime and all this. And you see over the years that, like any other business, the smart guys rise to the top. Now, I think society just has so much technology to be used against them now that maybe your run at the top isn't what it used to be, but you're always going to be, if it's crime, if it's a school, if it's, I'm sure in your industry, even the background with physics, you probably met some guys whose, intelligence you questioned over the years.
Yeah. Usually the really intelligent guys had some kind of personality disorder.
And, again, too, what we see now when we're going back and looking through history, some of these either great minds or, people known for just terrible acts, we can see now that there's definitely a bigger issue there. So it's interesting to see. How are you interested with keeping working with Vanguard Press for the second one? Will it be through them again?
Yeah, well, they kind of got me on a 3-book kind of retainer thing. So it's not a proper. They're not paying me any money up front, but they have first refusal on my second and third books.
Oh, that's all. Well, you know what? That's great. That's another interesting thing. I'm trying to talk with everybody here when they come on. It's interesting how, like, I just wrote mine, said, and then what happens happens. But I mean, did you go out of your way to try and find, like, were you shopping it around to these different companies, or did someone happen to help you out with it? How did you get to this process?
Yeah, well, I just did like you did. I just wrote the book because I wanted to write a book. And when I finished it, I was looking up publishers on the internet, like you do, and Pegasus and Vanguard Press actively encourage new writers.
Oh, okay.
So I sent it to them. I sent it to them first. I said, okay, let's see what they say. And they came back 10 weeks later and said, yeah, we'll take it.
That's great. So this is not considered any kind of vanity press then? They didn't, excuse me, there was no big fee up front for them to publish it?
No, nothing like that. I've seen some reviews from some people who accuse them of being a vanity press outlet, but it's not really supported by the stats and the books that they do publish.
You know what? Again, we were talking about that before we decided to record. I guess it's just your own personal experience. I've seen people like outrageous amounts of money to get their book published, so there'd be no doubt that some of them could be considered a vanity pressing. Vanguard, I've never heard that on. Pegasus that you just mentioned, I don't know too much about them, but I think it's just, I was talking to one editor who rightfully admitted sometimes they'll just do it as kind of a nuisance fee. They just kind of want you to go away. They'll tell you it's this much to do it, but it's great to hear that that was not the case that happened to you. I have a friend who in California who wrote a very religious book, and it's, you know, it's not a bad book, but it's not for everybody. But when we start talking about fees and what we went through, and she said, you know, what did you pay for? And I said, well, you know, I paid to have somebody help me edit it because I'm a very firm believer that a second set of eyes on your work is the greatest thing ever. You're going to miss something, even if it's a spelling mistake, even if it's something that doesn't ring true. She paid thousands and thousands of dollars to have this book published. And I just thought, I don't know if I'd do that. I don't know if I'd go that route.
I mean, I was grateful that I was given my editor and, you know, given the proofreaders, because I didn't know that someone's internal thoughts should be written in italics. So I'd put them in inverted commas, you know, and
I learned that the hard way as well.
Don't do it that way. And the things like simple things like 9 a.m., 9 p.m. There's a convention to put the dots, and I didn't know any of this.
Yeah,
you know. So they went through it. I think the first time it came back, there was 20 pages of corrections.
Yeah, and it's hard to see though.
Yeah, and it's obvious in hindsight, but at the time, I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it.
No,
so,
I think it's very hard for anybody to take. I remember I had very little rewrites with mine, but there was a couple of spots that I was adamant that I wanted this in. And then when what do you mean you're going to take that out? And then when they go back and they give you the critique and they explain why, that, we have to change it or it have to comes out, it usually makes a lot of sense. So I can't, some of these books that I've seen online that people just forego the editing, I don't know. You were saying, so between this, did you have any kind of beta readers, or was it just all the company that looked through it?
No, I have two people here who read it during development, and then were the only two people who read it when it finished before I rewrote it and then sent it off.
Oh, okay.
So I relied on two outside readers, two people that I know, to give me the feedback of did they enjoy it and what did they feel, and then from there I made some corrections, and then the publisher made more corrections, and we've ended up with something pretty close to the original, but much more consistent.
Yeah, again, I think it's just a learning process for everybody. I don't know if I'm a big proponent of telling people that they should edit or go through it. I think you shouldn't do it to the point that it drives you crazy, but this is the only thing I find with the independent publishing and stuff. There are some out there that are just, they're not done very well. And if somebody would have taken the time to go through it with them and say, can we change this? It might have made a really big difference. I mean, the
Yeah,
whole. Sorry, go ahead.
one of my readers actually recommended I remove a whole chapter, and it was quite far in. It was chapter 53 out of 60, and when I reread it, I thought, as a standalone chapter, it's fine, but it doesn't fit in the book. And she was absolutely right. It was unnecessary.
We had almost the same thing with mine. We had one near the middle, and we had one, I think actually it was my second last chapter, where the guy said, take these two, put them aside, and use it for an idea later on. And I said, why? And he said, because I like them. He said, but they have nothing to do with anything else. So I don't know if that's just if that's our own beginner mistake of thinking we have to put more in, or thinking we have to include things. Yeah, that's really interesting, because it went through the exact same thing. We had two chapters that they just said, look, they're not bad, they just don't fit the story. Maybe you can take them and make something else out of them. Were you willing to take that chapter out, or were you a little offended, or?
I sulked for a day, and then
it's hard. No one wants to accept criticism, and it's easy to say to somebody, it's easy to tell somebody else to take criticism, but when it's pointed at you, it's like, what? No. It's always a very, very different case. It can make it very personal.
in my career, when I got a job as a director of a company, I believe I'm right even when I'm wrong. So in this situation where I've written it and someone says to me that's wrong,
yeah,
it was tough.
I think if people can give you a critical view, which relates the points, and I find the mistake that people make are just, everybody wants to have a flawed character now. And I understand that. We're realizing that people are very much their experiences or what's happened to them, but the flaws can't overtake the character to the point where you can't have them do something. That one of the mistakes I find when I have students write at school is that they just want to throw that little extra bit in, and you try and tell them, like, it's not serving any purpose. It's really great that you want to tell me that, but unless you want to write a whole another 10 pages of why this is going to affect this character, like there's no purpose to it. And I think this whole, putting in all the contrivances and adding all that, and I don't know, I personally, I love a good book that's 300-400 pages long. But I mean, if it's gonna be 200 pages and it's gonna be streamlined, there's not a problem with that either.
Yeah, no, I agree. I tried not to overdevelop if I could. I don't write lots of descriptions of trees billowing in the wind or anything like this. It tends to be it's raining or it's dry. I don't do a lot of scenic descriptions, because I think you're just almost padding sometimes.
You know what? It's an excellent point, because I told somebody that before. I can't remember the gentleman's exact words, but I had like an economy of description or something, and he said, and I said, I'm not, if you come into a room, I'm not going to tell you what every chair looks like. You know what I mean? If the room serves a purpose behind the reason why we're sitting in this room, then I'll tell you. But I'm not, the TV's so big and this is in the corner, there's cracks in the paint, and it doesn't serve a purpose to the story. Other people really like telling you that whole description. But yeah, you're one of the few people who said the same thing. It's just, I'm not, that's not why you're reading the story. I'm not going to tell you that whole deal. It's interesting to see.
I want to tell the story. I don't want to fill it with unnecessary stuff, So.
When is the time frame for number 2 in this series there, Gibson?
It should be we should probably send it to the publishers in about 1 or 2 months. So I'm looking at 6 to 9 months. It should be out in the market or available for the market.
That's great. What about, are there ideas already for 3? Or is that too far down the road?
Number 3 would be the last one for this character, this set of characters. And there is an idea, but I think I'm going to try something else as book 3 before I do that as book 4.
That's great.
Because
That's
I
a great
want to try
idea.
different genre a little bit as well.
Are we on Amazon worldwide, or should people go to Amazon Australia? Where would be the easiest way that we can put, because I want to put the tags on the bottom, the name of the book, your book, all that. Obviously, they can go right to Vanguard Press, but what would be the easiest way for people to order this?
It's on Amazon globally.
Global. Okay.
It's centred in Amazon UK, but it's global. You can get it in Amazon Australia. You can get it in the US. So it's available anywhere on Amazon.
That's great.
It's also on Barnes and Noble and Waterstones and Goodreads.
Are you getting anything from Barnes and Noble?
I don't know yet. I don't think so.
Yeah, you know what? That was a lot of people. The rumor has been that they're teetering on bankruptcy, on the verge of bankruptcy. So usually here in Canada, it's either Amazon, which is pretty well worldwide, or here the big chain is called Chapters, where people order most of it from. And Barnes and Noble, it looks great when you go on their website and stuff, but this is what I keep hearing from people. So I'd always like to ask everybody where, you know, as many places you can get it as possible, because it seemed to me and my editors strange that they picked up the book, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to see who where you're selling. And you also said Goodreads?
Yes, and Goodreads, yeah. You can get it on Kindle as well, from Amazon, whatever as well.
Yeah.
The sales mainly so far have been from Pegasus Direct or from Amazon. That's been the main sort of sales so far.
I think just about everybody that seems to be the case. It's just so easy, you know what I mean? Amazon UK, Amazon, well, for us, excuse me, here in Canada, it's amazon.ca, amazon.com. You can pretty well pick it up wherever you need to. I think that's probably where everybody's sales come from, but I could be wrong on that. Gibson, I thank you so much for your time. We're going to put all these descriptions in the bottom. Again, we've been talking to Mr. Gibson Dickie. We are speaking about Count to 10, his first novel in a series that is going to run through these characters. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.